Today on Locked On Red Wings, Scotty and I give you our predictions for the NHL standings and our predictions for who's going to win the Stanley Cup.
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. I am a podcast producer for WWJ News Radio 950, while Scotty is the host at Locked On Tigers, as well as a freelance journalist for the Detroit News. And today, guys, with 2 days remaining as of recording this, 1 day by the time you're listening to this, till the start of the Red Wings NHL season, we're going to go through, and with 30 minutes, it's going to be a little bit of a lightning-paced one, but we're going to give you our final predictions on the standings in each division, and as well as which teams are going to clinch the wild card and who will face off in the Stanley Cup final. So, Scotty, because, like I said, it's so jam-packed, I feel like we should get right into it. What division you want to start with, man?
I want to save the Atlantic for last.
I think that's smart. You know, hold on to those viewers until the very end because they can't scrub through.
Yeah. We want to keep people at the edge of their seats. Golly. Do you want to start easier or more difficult? You pick that answer, and I'll give you what I think we should do based on that answer.
More difficult.
Okay, let's go to the Metro.
Okay. I guess I'm starting then.
Yeah. Well, I was kind of handing it back over to you. Yeah.
Gotcha. So for the Metro,
like a little ping pong thing, like back and forth. It was good.
Is that what podcast hosts are supposed to do? I don't know. I'm still learning. Yeah, I've only been doing this for literally a year now. So for the Metropolitan Division, this is a tough one because the reason why we picked it, because there's a lot of teams that got a lot better, much like the Atlantic Division this season, as well as teams that are just remaining as good as they were, or if not a little worse, but still contenders. I have starting from, let's go 8 to 1.
Yeah,
I have Philadelphia as the 8th place team in the Metropolitan Division. I think that's a really easy one. That's a team that's a pretender right now. They aren't admitting to themselves that their whole goon mentality isn't going to work. They're not admitting to themselves they need a full rebuild.
When you are going to be in the running to have the best odds to land Bedard.
But see, it's a mentality thing. They think they can compete. They can't.
Oh,
they're not going to compete. They're pretending like they're a contender
behind the bench. Yeah.
So they're 8th place easily for me. Behind them, I think this was a really tough one.
I still love Carter Hart though.
Yes, sure.
I'm a stan.
However, whatever, but good for you, buddy. This was a tough one for me, but I did pick the New Jersey Devils to finish 7th, and that's a really tough one because they are a really young team with a lot of good youth in the pipeline. But I just feel like it's not the right season for it to come together in an especially tough division where even your older teams are still holding on to their superstars, and those superstars are still contending at a high level. Just above them at 6th in the division, I have the New York Islanders. I have the New York Islanders because I think they're going to have a bounce-back season with their first year with Lane Lambert behind the bench, but not bounce back enough to make the playoffs. They're still a really good core, but their big problem is they're not a high-scoring core. They're a very defensively minded team, and yes, defense wins championships, but you also have to score goals, and they don't do a whole lot of that. So I think in the end, that's going to sink their ship when you compare them to the Columbus Blue Jackets, who I have coming in at 5th, who picked up a huge guy in Johnny Gaudreau, a perennial 100-point scorer, as well as solid goaltending, as Scotty's literally knocking stuff over on the other side of
throwing stuff all over the room here.
Elvis Merzlikins is going to have another great year. I think they're going to come in 5th. And then in 4th is Washington Capitals, my first wild card team in this Eastern Conference. The Washington Capitals, as long as they got Ovechkin, I think they're going to be in the mix. I think they're still going to be a good team. They're a little bit older, but they're still going to be very good. And then my top 3, Pittsburgh Penguins.
Let me catch up to you. We'll do it this way. We can cut the division in half because we have the same for Philly. And I have different across the board for the 3 above Philly. But I think we're going to have pretty similar in the top 3. So at 7, you had
New Jersey Devils.
Like a handoff thing. Okay, cool.
New Jersey Devils. We're in sync today, guys.
Okay. So you have the Devils. I still have the Blue Jackets down there. I think that this is like obviously Johnny Hockey's a huge get, but this was a team that was not very good last season.
Yeah.
And what really has had kind of a implosion of like the last 2 seasons, 2 years ago, the Pierre-Luc Dubois thing, like that whole saga, like there's just been a lot of stuff going around there. They haven't really been very competitive. Don't need to take too much more time on that. I think that's going to be kind of a dogfight for who gets 7th between them and the Devils, who I have at 6. I think that's obviously a really fun and upcoming team. And I think this is like step 1 into their like launch of like going forward. I think you give that team and kind of the core that they've built, 2 years, 3 years, maybe on the longer end, if you're patient enough. Like I think that's a team, especially if they get a year of lottery luck mixed in with that could be really, really solid going forward. Then I have the New York Islanders at 5. I agree with you. I think they're going to take that they're going to be a fun team. Like optically, I think that the Islanders are going to be one of the more fun teams like in the sport. I think they're going to be really fun to watch. I still have them as kind of a year away thing, and then I also have the Caps at 4, and I also have them as a wild card team for me. So
yeah, and so then getting into the top 3. I have the Pittsburgh Penguins at 3rd. Again, another team that's chock full of superstars. I mean, Letang, Malkin, Crosby, NHL record for a trio, 17 straight seasons together. They're still there. They're still very good. You got Brian Rust. You have the young goaltending as well. They're a team that's a little bit mix of older vets that are still very good and younger players. I think they're going to be right there in the playoff mix. But then you have the two, quote unquote, young teams that have made a resurgence in the last few years. New York Rangers, I have in 2nd in the division. They made the Eastern Conference Finals this past playoffs. I think that Mika Zibanejad is going to come out and he's going to be great again. Obviously, Artemi Panarin is one of the best in the game. Igor Shesterkin proved last year that he has what it takes to be one of the best in the game. I think he'll come down to earth a little bit this season because his statistics last season were a little bit insane, but he's still going to be one of the best goaltenders in the league. So I think that's going to propel them right there. Oh, Adam Fox. Can't even forget about Adam Fox. He's a Norris contender as well. They have a lot of really young players, and a lot of those really young players are going to be vying for individual awards. I mean, that's a mix for success right there. And then number 1 in the division, I have is the Carolina Hurricanes. I think that they're just the most complete and deep team in the Metropolitan Division. They've been hanging around as one of the better teams for the last few years, but every year they've been getting a little bit better. I think the Carolina Hurricanes are going to be first in the Metropolitan Division. Yeah.
Like that stretch really did like propel them into this like new kind of stratosphere of how competitive a team they are. Yeah, I'm chalk. I'm right there with you. I have Pittsburgh at 3, Rangers at 2, Carolina at 1, and I do want to just I reiterate everything you said about Pittsburgh and Carolina. New York is like a team that I truly think over the next couple of years is another team that's going to get even better. Like that is a young core that is only going to keep improving. I don't know if fear is the right word, but like they're a team that I definitely keep my eye on as far as like future deep cup contenders. The New York Rangers are certainly one of those teams in my eyes. I think they're only going to get better as time goes on.
Absolutely. So we seem pretty lockstep there in terms of the Metropolitan Division. There's a few discrepancies. The middle, the thing is the middle of each of these divisions is going to be so hard to predict in the end.
Yeah, it's a
lot
bleep show. Yeah,
there's not a lot separating a lot of these teams, which is funny because in the Atlantic last year you could cut a clean line. Yep. Like it was literally the top 4 and the bottom 4. Right. But this year, with how a lot of those teams in the bottom 4 made a jump, like it's going to be tough. Absolutely. So. But let's take a quick break because we're running up against it. When we come back, we'll move on to predictions of what division you want to do. Let's do Pacific Division, easier one following that. Yep. But first, got to talk to you guys today about BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number 1 source for your football betting info this season and NHL betting info this season. Find all of the latest player developments, team matchups, and news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game you can find. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sport wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Scotty and I are giving you our division standings as well as who we have going to the playoffs. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention with the Metropolitan division. The Carolina Hurricanes are one of my teams going to the Stanley Cup final.
Okay, yeah. I didn't know if we were doing that or saving it. Yeah, the Hurricanes are also one of my teams going to the Stanley Cup final. Yeah.
I totally forgot to mention that as we were going through it. But yes, I have the Hurricanes going to the Stanley Cup final.
I'm lockstep with you. I think that this is a big year for the Hurricanes.
Yeah, I think they finally get over that final hump and are able to get there because they're a deep team, man. They're incredibly good. Yeah. But Pacific Division,
So this is just for the record. If you would have said easy at the beginning, this is the one I would have gone to.
Yeah.
But you said start with more difficult.
They're easy, but the fact that I don't know if easy is the right term, as in the top 2 or 3 are really good, but then after that, it's just like you could interchange a lot of these teams because the Pacific.
Yeah, I think
weak
the bottom is you're right. The bottom is almost impossible to predict spot on, but I think. Like the playoff teams that come out of the Pacific, I think are like very easy.
Why don't you start us off since I started off with the Metropolitan division?
Okay, for sure. With the Pacific, I kind of had a debate in my head on who was going to be 8. I think again, like the bottom half of this, I think is a lot more difficult than the top half of it, but I'm going to have the San Jose Sharks at 8. I think that this is a kind of a team that's bottoming out. We love the dudes over at Locked On Sharks.
They recognize it. They know
JD now, but yeah, those are the dogs. But I fully expect this to be a pretty rough season for San Jose, and they're going to be in the running for Bedard and have a fun little off season when it comes to that. So I mean, just like. Have fallen apart over the last 2 years, like quite literally, just a lot of pieces leaving, retiring, etc. 7, I'm gonna go this. I don't like the fact that all Red Wings fans are like the media has made us like built to hate the Ducks, and so I might be kind of an outlier here, but I'm gonna go Seattle at 7.
Wow,
I still expect this Kraken team to look more like competent and look a little bit more competitive. And I really I hope Matty Beniers can get some legitimate playing time. And like, I like some of the pieces they have, but I think they took a much different approach within the expansion draft than Vegas did. Vegas was like, who can we get to make the best team right now? Whereas Seattle was like, oh, let's build more of like a, enter a rebuild right away type of thing. And so I expect them to look better some nights, and I really like their young talent. I think they have a decent pool brewing over there, but I'm still going to have them at 7, and then I will put Anaheim at 6. This is a team that, again, has a lot of young talent. Took a big step forward last year, a team that was kind of labeled as one of the worst teams in hockey, like least we forget, going into last season. I think a lot of people predicted them to be one of, if not the worst team in the sport. And then, at one point, like almost halfway through the season, if the season would have stopped at like 40 or 45 games, they would have been in the playoffs, and then just had a catastrophic second half. But I don't know. I really like what they got going on in net, obviously, for a long time. I think their forward core is young and upcoming. I think Anaheim will still miss out on the postseason, but I think that they will be an electric product to watch on the ice. So I guess I'll start with those 3.
I mean, that's fair. I think we're really close in our predictions. I obviously also have San Jose bottoming out for Bedard. JD is very conscious of it. If you go to the Locked On Sharks or follow him on Twitter, he's very conscious that it's a take commander. Their meme game is the best on Locked On. Absolutely. But then after that, I actually have Anaheim as the second to worst team.
Totally fair.
I think last year was a bit of an anomaly in the way they came out of the gate firing. I don't think that you're going to see that kind of similar thing going on this year. And then they didn't really do much in free agency. They really stayed pat. So they're bringing back a lot of the same players.
They kept Gibson, yeah.
They kept Gibson, and then they got the addition of John Klingberg on a 1-year contract. But I've talked a lot about John Klingberg. I mean, my narrative on him completely shifted halfway through the season. I think he's a glass cannon type defenseman. He's all offense, no defense.
Gibson should have been traded like 3 years ago.
Yeah.
They would have gotten a ransom for him. But no, they decided they wanted to have a really good goalie when everything else sucked. Anyway, that's a whole different conversation, but totally fair, totally legit.
Yeah, it's just, I think that this is a team, I hate to say it, but I think they're almost like the Flyers, not to the extent of the Flyers, where they're kind of pretending right now, like they're going to be more competitive than they are. They should have made more moves in free agency.
I agree with that.
Or if they wanted to actually compete, I think that they are actually still in the midst of a rebuild. I think last year fooled a lot of people, and I think they were further along than they were. Like how with Detroit, we were fooled. Like when they played the first half of that season and we're competitive, we were starting to talk, and we'll own up to it because we're humble. We're very humble here at Locked On Red Wings. But we began to get fooled by the fact that the Red Wings were playing so competitive with teams that we ignored the cracks in a lot of times. And then when it fell apart, we were like, yeah, well, of course they did. I think it's the same deal with the Anaheim Ducks, but they, unlike the Red Wings, didn't make any moves to get better. So I think that's why they're going to be 7. I got to move on. I'm talking too much about the Anaheim Ducks. I have Seattle as 6th. I like the Kraken a lot. I wanted to put them higher, and we're going to talk about this later in the show. They made moves to get better. They're bringing in young talent like Matty Beniers, obviously, and Spencer Wright.
I love that, man.
And they're young and they're raw, so it's going to take them a while. They're not going to be immediately better, and they got 60 points last year, so they're not going to get to 80 points this year. That's just not possible. You don't jump by 20 points in a single season. Hint at what we're going to talk about later. So I think if they can get to 75, they can get to that 6th position. And then at 5th, I have the Vancouver Canucks.
Yeah, I think the one I'm most confident about is Vancouver at 5. Like that, and like that sounds weird to say, but like I think they are very clearly like comfortably better than the 3 teams below them, and they are comfortably worse than the 4 teams remaining. I think this is like if you could go to BetOnline and you could bet 5th place in the Pacific, Vancouver's a lock, let me tell you.
Yeah. And so do you want to go with, let's do top 4 now?
Yeah, sure. So 4, I'm going to have Vegas. I'm also pretty, I'm relatively confident in this one. I really like the Kings, which I'll get to in a sec. But yeah, I mean, Vegas I don't think you can count on like a historical collapse again. I think that in the same way, we talk about anomalies. I think that that's probably also an anomaly. And if it wasn't for a historical collapse at the end of the season, they would have been in the postseason last year as well. And yeah, I still expect, they obviously made the big trade of the season last year, right? And they're going to get a kind of a more close to a full year of that group and that forward core and everything. Yeah, I totally expect Vegas to be right in the mix there. And I think that they're probably going to be my wild card play at 4. Yeah. Do you have someone different at 4?
No.
Okay.
No. So my thing with Vegas is they keep getting better with skaters. Like they make moves, and sometimes it's a net zero move where you trade away Max Pacioretty, but then you bring in Jack Eichel. And obviously those moves didn't happen concurrently, but over the course, over the course of the last season and off season, due to injuries, this is what happened essentially. And so there are still a stacked roster offensively. They brought in Phil Kessel, but they have one big question mark. Who the hell's their goaltender? Robin Leonard went down with double hip surgery, and they tried to replace him with Aiden Hill, who's a fringe backup goaltender in the back. Like he was bad for the San Jose Sharks, and the San Jose Sharks were one of the worst in the team, which could have probably played into it a little bit. But that Vegas team has a big question mark in net, and you need a good goalie. Ask the Toronto Maple Leafs. I mean, you need good goaltending if you want to go anywhere in this league. Ask the Edmonton Oilers. You need good goaltending if you want to go anywhere in this league. You can't just rely on pure brute force to get to the Stanley Cup final and win the championship. Edmonton came close, made it to the Western Conference final, but you need depth, and they just don't have goalie depth right now. So I think that's why they're going to be 4th. Although I do have them as a wild card team.
You have them in the wild card?
Yes.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Yep. Then I'll tell you my top.
Yeah, you go 3.
I'll go 3 here. I got the LA Kings as my third in the division. I think that they're a team. Man, talk about teams that kind of like rebuild on the fly. That the fact they went from 2012, 2014 Stanley Cup champions, began to decline, and now have inclined again is really incredible. And Jonathan Quick's resurgence in his career is also incredible. But they were a good team last year. They finished third in the division last year with 99 points. I think they're going to be right there again.
I'm going to be honest. I tried with every ounce of my being. I tried to find a way that I could justify putting LA at 2. Like I wanted to do it so badly. I am so high on this Kings team. I think that they're going to be, I think they're going to take even more of a step forward than last year. They're young, but they also they're getting incredible production out of veterans, like you said. I think that I love this Kings team this season, and I was trying to find every possible like excuse that I could pull out and be like, well, because of this, they will be number 2. And I just, in good faith, if I was narrative pushing, I would. But we all know I don't do that. So we
okay.
I really did try, but in good faith, I also have the Kings at 3. But just know that it's a trying to be a realist 3, and the fan of what they've built over there. I really think that they're going to snap and have a phenomenal season. I'm very high on that team. And then 2 and 1, I have Calgary 2, and I have Edmonton at 1. And I think that Calgary, yes, they lost huge production at the top and Gaudreau and everything, but they still have. This is one of the deepest teams in the entire NHL. They are still top heavy, even while being deep and losing Johnny Gaudreau. That's how much talent that team had last season. I fully expect them to be in the mix and make a deep postseason push. And that Edmonton, regular season Edmonton, I'm not worried about. So I fully expect them to definitely be in the top 2. And assuming health of everyone of that top line, yeah, I'm gonna pencil them in at the top of the Pacific.
Same. I have Calgary at 2 and Edmonton at 1. And I have Calgary at 2 more so because I think they slipped a little bit more than Edmonton really got a lot better.
Sure.
Now, Calgary, so obviously they lost Matthew Tkachuk and they lost Johnny Gaudreau, and those are huge blows. But then they brought in Mackenzie Weegar. They brought in Jonathan Huberdeau. Huberdeau also got 100-point scorer. You have Mackenzie Weegar, who's one of the up-and-coming defensemen in the league. I don't know if that's the right term to use for him at his age, but he's a really, really good defenseman. And so you got better in the back end. You still have Lindholm. You brought in Nazem Kadri. You have Mangiapane. And then you have Jacob Markstrom in net, who had a save percentage of .912 last year. He's a very, maybe not one of the best goaltender in the league, but he is a
gamer,
number one goaltender. He's a solid
gamer.
number one goaltender.
He's a gamer.
So
you saw him late in the season. Like he's a gamer, man.
So I think they lost a little bit of offensive production, but they replaced it very well. Second in the division very easily. And honestly, when it comes to the Edmonton Oilers, they got better in net by adding Jack Campbell. Although Campbell had a down year last year, I think he'll bounce back. I think he's going to be fine. I still really
like that move. Given the cap that they had available to them, I really like that move as a value move.
And absolutely. And I think that while their defense is still a huge question mark, when you have the offensive production of Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, and unfortunately Evander Kane, you're going to outscore your opponents more. You can give up 5 goals, and those guys are going to get you 7. Yeah. So I think they're easily.
If you stop the first line, you can stop the team. Yet it's impossible to stop the first line. So.
I remember the Wings beat the Edmonton Oilers early in the season last year, and we were happy because they held Connor McDavid to 1 goal.
Right. That's just how it is, man.
All right, we got to get to another break, and when we come back, we're going to move on to the Central Division, and then we'll round it out with the Atlantic Division. It's shaping like it's going to be a bit longer of an episode, but we want to do this right. So stick with us. We'll be back. Segment 3, Lockdown Red Wings podcast. Let's move on now, Scotty, to the Central Division. And you started off the last division, so I'll lead off with this one. So for the Central Division,
tough.
I have, excuse me, man, I got to clear my throat. Super professional of me, but it was bothering the heck out of me.
You muted the mic. That was good.
I did. Arizona blast. Easy. Yeah. They're playing at a college stadium, Mullet Arena, terrible. And the players are pissed that they're playing at Mullet Arena. They have no bona fide NHL players outside of Jacob Chychrun, who they're probably going to trade. So
it's, and then if they're not if they don't have the worst record in the NHL or the lowest point total in the NHL by the trade deadline, I think they certainly will by game 82. Yeah.
And then 7th overall, Chicago Blackhawks,
Yeah.
easily.
This is like
They
cut and
traded away so
dry.
much.
Yeah. Solidified Chicago 7, Arizona 8. I think
They
that's
dealt
pretty
away
straightforward.
DeBrincat. They dealt away Kirby Dach. They let Dominic Kubalik walk. So they let a lot of their young players, maybe not the most explosive players, but let a lot of young players walk or traded them away for just draft capital. They're very clearly tanking. There's lots of rumors swirling about whether or not Patrick Kane's going to finish his career as a Chicago Blackhawk. He might be getting dealt, but those are just rumors. There's nothing substantial. So that's an easy 7. And then from there, it gets a little like you could rotate teams in and out. I think Winnipeg's going to finish 6th. I think they're another team that wants to be a contender, but just doesn't have the pieces to be a true contender. So I think they're going to finish 6th. And then at 5th, I have the Dallas Stars. I'm always down on the Dallas Stars, and they always prove me wrong. They keep making the playoffs, and I keep thinking they're not going to. We'll see. Ottinger just got paid. We'll see if he's legitimate. But, I mean, they lost John Klingberg and with how much BS I talk about him, he is a high offensive production defenseman. So they obviously have some great players, Miro Heiskanen and Jason Robertson, rather. But outside of that, I just feel like they're not that deep of a team. I think that their star players are getting older. Sagan was pretty good last year, but he's going to be another year older. I don't think they have enough to make the playoffs. So those are my bottom 4.
Yeah, so I'm lockstep with you on 8, 7, and 6. I'm gonna have Dallas at the 4 and being one of my last wild card spots, and I'm gonna have Nashville at 5. I'm presuming you have Nashville at 4.
Yes.
That's I think those two. I think that's gonna be an electric race, I guess is my point. I think those are two teams that are very lockstep, and I think that down the wire, presuming they're both healthy. Maybe they both buy at the deadline. Maybe that's kind of what determines who gets the upper edge there. I think that's going to be a really close race. I'm going to take Dallas. And for a lot of the reasons you said, obviously they did suffer losses, but I still, I don't know. I still like Dallas. And like you said, they're kind of a team that's always overlooked a little bit. And Nashville, I don't know, like every year, it just seems to me that they're like further removed from like what they were. And like, I
they're a team that's playoff contender, but not Stanley Cup contender. I think they'll make the playoffs.
Like they will be in the mix undoubtedly. And they, I don't know, they have a decent kind of mix of veteran and youth over there, I guess. But I will take Dallas at 4 and Nashville at 5, even though I think that's going to be a really close race.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that for my top 4, like you said, it's Nashville at 4th. I think that they're a team. They're kind of like Dallas in a way. And like my Western Conference knowledge, admittedly, isn't as strong as my Eastern Conference knowledge because we watch a bunch of Eastern Conference games. But I feel like Nashville is like the Dallas Stars, where they have a bunch of young players and they have a bunch of older vets. And the young players are studs and stars, and the older vets are just kind of there. Sometimes, like, they're good, but they're not great. Like that's what Washington and the Penguins are doing really well. Is their older guys are still really freaking good, but some of the older guys on these teams aren't as good as they were. But I think that you have Yossi. You still have your great young goaltending. I think Nashville and the addition of McDonough, who's not as great as he once was, but he's still pretty good. I think that they're going to be in the mix. I think they're going to be. I think they'll be fine. Oh, you know what? Hold on, I read that wrong. Below Nashville, I have St. Louis. St. Louis, I have 4th.
Wow, I think that's a hot take.
That is a hot take, and I acknowledge that's a hot take. I read this wrong. Nashville, I have at 3rd. And the reason why I have St. Louis at 4th is because their key additions this year were a bunch of Red Wings players. They re-signed Leddy. They signed Thomas Greiss as their backup goaltending after trading Ville Husso to the Detroit Red Wings. I mean, they have a bunch of guys from a bad Red Wings team, and they expect that to make them better. Now, they were a good team last year. They had 109 points. But I think that they'll be a wild card team at 4, and then Nashville is going to take over at 3rd, man. I know Nashville's a good team last year, too. They had 97 points. But I think that St. Louis took a step backwards this offseason. And plus, we don't know what's going on with Jordan Binnington. He seems like he's never healthy. And so you're going to have to rely on Thomas Greiss. I don't think that's a good recipe for success. I think they took a step backwards going to 4th in the division and Nashville at 3rd. I apologize for that mess up.
Yeah, so I agree with everything you said, but I still have St. Louis at 3. I agree that they did not have a very good offseason, but I don't think it was catastrophic, going to be fighting for a playoff spot bad either. I mean, this was a very good team this last season. And I really like them kind of slating in there at 3rd. I think that's kind of the perfect spot for them. They're a clear step below the top 2. But I don't really expect them to be in that Dallas-Nashville mix either. I agree with everything you said, but just the final product, I still expect them to have a point total in the mid-high 90s.
And I mean, that's my hot take of this whole conversation is I think that St. Louis is going to slip a little bit in the standings. And you're right. They have they have Jordan Kyrou, who they just re-upped for a long time. Ryan O'Reilly's still very, very good as well. But there's something about that St. Louis team that just gives me a bad vibe. Like you can call it that's it. Maybe that's just my reasoning.
Here's the thing.
I have a vibe about it, but
despise that team. So like if you had him at 8, I'd be like, heck yeah, dude. I'm with it. Like I cannot stand the St. Louis Blues actually. So like I'm totally chill with disrespecting them. That's fine. I'll allow it for sure.
That's funny. But yeah, that's where I'm at with them. And then we're a top 3 now.
Top 2
because I gave you Nashville as my 3rd. Yeah, Minnesota 2, Colorado
1.
Colorado, I have in the Stanley Cup final.
I also have Colorado. Yeah, my Stanley Cup is Colorado, Carolina, and that's what yours is too. That's great. Yeah. We did a good job. But I like Colorado. I don't know if you want to go into Colorado, you're more than welcome to. But like I think we're all pretty well aware that that's a juggernaut. That's an offensive powerhouse. They're going to outscore. They're going to have the ability to outscore every single team they play. They have the talent to outscore 31 other teams, and that's something that only they can say. They're obviously they took a hit defensively, and maybe the goaltending situation isn't the greatest thing in the world, but I don't think it matters at the end of the day. And they proved that last season. So I fully expect them to be, I think that's a slam dunk. They win the Central. And on top of that, I think that they're the pretty heavy favorite to make it out of the West back into the Stanley Cup finals. But I do want to start a dialogue a little bit about Minnesota. I love this Wild team as well. In the same breath that I talked about with the Kings, I think this is a team that I think it was the bubble year was the first 2020, like the pandemic and the playoffs and the bubble. I think that was the first year that I really watched them and was like, they have something like cooking. Like they're, you know what I mean? Like they're building, they're heading in a really solid direction. They got a really young, but really talented core. They've made moves every single offseason since then that I have really liked. I am a big fan of what the Wild have built. And honestly, I'm not going to go as far to say that they'll like give Colorado a run for their money at the top of the division, but come postseason time, I think they win a series they're maybe not supposed to by the end of it. I really expect them to kind of make a deep playoff push. I love this Wild team.
Yeah, I mean, they're a team that's building it together. I mean, they already have the young stars. You have Kirill Kaprizov. You have Matthew Boldy. You know, maybe not star status yet. We didn't see a lot of him last year, but what we did see was phenomenal. They have good young goaltending as well. I mean, that's a team that could be one of the premier teams very shortly. But, I mean, as far as Colorado goes, I agree with what you said. There's not much left to say. They're one of the few teams, I would argue, maybe 3 teams in the NHL that is maybe 4. There's 4 teams in the NHL, and, you know, go figure, they're like the top teams in each division that have it all. They have top end scoring that can just put up numbers. They have good defense and they have good goaltending. Colorado probably has the weakest goaltending out of the 4 teams, but they make up for it by having Nathan McKinnon. And their goaltending is not bad. It's not like Edmonton Oilers bad. It's not like Toronto Maple Leafs bad. It's decent. It was a decent tandem, and it took them all the way. Now, they lost Darcy Kemper, but they still got a decent tandem going on in Colorado. So I think that they're still going to be right there. Now, moving on to the Atlantic Division, because we got to do that. We're already at 34 minutes, but like I said, it's going to be a longer episode.
Well, I think this one will be pretty quick too.
I mean, because we've talked about it a lot.
Of our stuff known within the Atlantic.
We've talked about it a lot. I think 8th is very easily Montreal. I think they're going full time.
Yeah, Commander. I don't think that's particularly close. Yeah.
I think followed up by them is Buffalo. We've talked a lot about them. They have a slew of really young talent. Oh, they're gambling a lot. Did you see that other signing they made today? Mateus Samuelsson. They signed to a 7-year deal. Guy hasn't even scored a goal yet at the NHL level. And granted, that's not the style of defense he plays.
Right. Yeah.
But they signed him to 7 years, $4.5 million. He hasn't even scored a goal yet. They are going ham signing long-term extensions.
Yeah, I know it's like sacrilegious to say this, but I kind of like what Buffalo's cooking too. I like the direction they're headed.
It's one of those philosophies.
And like it's Buffalo, like they'll screw it up, but like it's
But that's exactly it. Like they've been so bad for so long that not Lou Lamoriello, but the GM's gone in there and has absolutely decided that I have to be aggressive because we've been bad for so long that if I see a player like Tage Thompson and I think this player's going to be great, I'm going to give him a paycheck. Because if I roll the dice and I'm right, this team's going to be a stud. And obviously they have Rasmus Dahlin. They got Owen Power. They have a lot.
Do you remember the hype around Dahlin when he came over?
I remember the hype around Owen Power, and we haven't seen him yet at the NHL.
Yeah, but Dahlin dwarfs Power's hype. People were arguing on draft day whether Power should have gone 1-1 still. Like, Dahlin was like, he was him, bro. People were like, oh, this dude's going to be like the greatest defenseman. And like, he's solid for sure. And he's still super young and everything. And I like the direction they're headed. But man, he had crazy hype. Oh my goodness.
But yeah, that's why I have them at 7. They have a lot of young talent that's just not ready yet, but they're going to be very good very soon. Assuming that these contracts don't blow up in their face, that they're a very glass cannon team. They could go either way. But then 6th, Scotty, I have the Detroit Red Wings. I have the Detroit Red Wings. I've been going back and forth on this for so long. We've been talking about it at length, how I want them to be 5th at least. I wanted them to be 4th or 5th, fighting for a wild card. But then, like, as the hype from the free agency ends and you begin to look more objectively at the division and looking at the teams, the Detroit Red Wings had, what was it? I have it up here, actually. They had 74 points this last season. And Derek Lalonde said it on Spit and Chicklets this week. To be a Stanley Cup team, you need to be at least like a 90-point team. And the Red Wings are not going to be 26 points better than they were this last year. They're not going to be, or 20 points better than they were last year to make the playoffs. So 4th, the top 4, I think, is probably out of their reach. And then Ottawa is neck and neck with them. And Ottawa is just, I think, maybe a baby step above. I could see them getting 5th in the division. I could, just solely because now they took that big hit with Cam Talbot being out to start the season. So their goaltending is a question mark again. But they're neck and neck. I just think Ottawa, with that addition of Claude Giroux and DeBrincat, is going to get them the offensive production they need to get 5th. It's going to be very neck and neck. I think they'll still going to finish with the over in the points. I think they're going to be 85, 86 points on the season. But I don't think that's going to be good enough to get them above 5th. So my official prediction is Detroit 6th, Ottawa 5th, but a very close 6th and 5th. It's going to be a step forward.
Yeah, it will be a step forward. I think I have both of these teams just barely missing the postseason, Ottawa and Detroit. And that's the obviously the team we've talked about all offseason, because everyone loves to ask Brian and I, a billion times to compare Ottawa and Detroit. That's like everybody's favorite thing to do. I still think that both of them are a year away from like legitimate playoff contention. You know what?
Do it. Go say it. I had to suppress
Brian. Ottawa 6. Give me Detroit 5. Okay. Give me Detroit 5. Brian, get out of my face. Look, everything you said is right, though. Like, joking aside, everything you said is right. The jump that people expect, they will take a jump as far as how talented and good the team is. That is objectively true. And we talk about it every day. Like, this is a team that is better, and they will be better. The issue is, this is probably the best division in hockey, and it got better across the board. Like, 7 teams got better. Yeah. And, well, Boston maybe not. Like, 6 teams either stayed the same or got better. And Boston is still very much a playoff team, obviously, even if they are just another year older. But they're going to be neck and neck, and the Red Wings taking a step forward might not reflect as
It might not be in the
prominently in
standings.
the team point total as people expect, even though objectively they got better just because of how competitive the Atlantic is. So I'm right there with you. I guess just to say it, I guess I'll take Detroit 5, just barely ahead of Ottawa, but I really do share all your thoughts.
And this thing is like, there is a reality where I see Detroit finishing 5th above the Ottawa Senators. Like I said, it's going to be neck and neck because, I start thinking about the Red Wings and the improvements they've made. I think that they, on paper, have enough talent to finish 5th. But when you look at it, like, paper doesn't always immediately translate on ice. You have a new head coach trying to implement a new system, and it could be a very good system, and they could find their stride, but there could be early season struggles, especially when you also implement like 6 or 7 new players on the team that have to build chemistry. So there could be growing pains this year, but I don't think the improvement is going to be in the standings, but I do think it will be in the point total. I think both Detroit and Ottawa, who finished 6th and 7th in the division last year with 74 and 73 points respectively, are both going to make 10 plus point jump in points. That's a huge improvement.
Those points have to go somewhere, and they can't all just be dumped on Montreal.
Yes.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, somebody has to lose games. So,
yeah. But, and then it comes, you could add Boston to the mix there because they have very key injuries early in the season. Marchand's out, McAvoy's out. And that could be huge to tanking them.
Their average team age is like 47 years old, too.
And their average team age is 47, but Patrice Bergeron is still Patrice Bergeron. He just won another.
No, like that. I didn't mean it as their talent has fallen off.
David Pasternak's still there.
Yeah.
Swayman looked fantastic last year as a rookie goaltender. I mean, they got a lot of pieces going for them as well that it's almost as if like
they're my last wild card team.
Oh yeah, they're my last wild card team as well. It's just I could see Boston slipping. Though? Well, that's obvious. Are you asking about the order?
Yeah, the order. Okay, yes. Obviously, I know the 3 teams we haven't talked about are left. Thank you, Brian. But what the order? Yes, I think that it's an interesting combo.
Yeah, so I have Florida at 3rd. I know they won the division last year, but there's a new head coach in town. And so it's another similar situation where there might be growing pains in regards to getting the system implemented. They did change out Huberdeau and Weegar, but got Matthew Tkachuk, which is a huge get. And when we had Armando on, he said it himself. He expects a slight step back in the team point-wise, but it's a short step back for a long-term 2 steps forward because Tkachuk's, a much younger player. So I think opens the window longer, but in the short term slides them back in the standings. Not enough out of the playoff picture, not enough out of the division picture, but I think 3rd in the division is where they'll sit. And then for 2nd and 3rd, this was a tough one. Tampa Bay is another year older. They're still a very good team, but they just went 3 straight trips to the Stanley Cup final, won 2 of them. I think they'll go from 3rd in the division last year to 2nd this year, partially just because I think Florida's going to slide back a little. They're still a complete team. They're still dominant, crazy good, but they're just another year older. And I think that Stanley Cup fatigue is a real thing. And then when it comes to Toronto, goaltending, even bigger question mark than last year. But you have Austin Matthews who's going to go out there and score you 50 goals, and Mitch Marner and Bunting.
They spent more money to get a worse goalie.
I think Toronto's going to score their way to the top of the division, much like Edmonton's going to. Now, what they do in the playoffs, better question, but
hilarious.
I think that's your top 3.
Objectively funny. Yeah, I'm actually going to take Tampa Bay 3.
Fair. That's fair.
I think that they, for all the reasons you said, those were all my key, hit points. Was that's a team that is another year older and has, consistently is playing into the summer. I think that's got to have somewhat of an effect. And also, they have proven now that they can turn it on in the playoffs and just be good old Tampa Bay again. They don't need, like, who cares? Like, they don't need to be winning a division to, like, prove themselves or anything. Like, they can, like Kawhi Leonard their way into the postseason and just, like, they're going to take a night off, whatever, play at Arizona maybe. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I don't think that the, like, regular season, getting a President's Trophy is, like, at the top of their priority. I think they're just going to turn it on come postseason time. Florida, I have at 2. I also expect a slight step back, but I still think that that's a really loaded young team. And then Toronto, I have at the top. I do think that they are going to be in some high scoring affairs at times. I think that they're going to have some, I guess, optically good hockey to watch, because it's going to be a lot of, for a casual fan, maybe a lot of high scoring games. But yeah, I think their offense is just like so deep. That's the thing that makes Toronto so insane, is they got fourth liners and healthies that would be like 2 and 3 on a lot of other teams. Like, they're just so ridiculous when it comes to depth. So yeah, I still have Toronto at top, even given the goalie issues. And then yeah, Stanley Cup, we both have the same thing, so that's good radio. But I guess we'll go with that, and I'll take Colorado to repeat.
There you go. Same.
Okay, great. This was awesome.
And that's the thing, guys. We didn't tell each other what our rankings were before coming into the episode. Like, this was independent of one another, and we came up with very similar, albeit like a couple. I think I had the hottest take with St. Louis slipping as far as they did, but
I don't mind it. I'm very pro St. Louis Blues slander. So
that's where we sit. And I mean, for one more time, I'll give you our Atlantic Division rankings, because I know that's the one you guys care about the most. Toronto, Tampa Bay, Florida, Boston, Ottawa, Detroit, Buffalo, and Montreal. But again, I think that 4, 5, and 6 is going to be a lot closer than it was last year. I think you're going to see Buffalo probably getting around 90 points, with the Senators and Red Wings in the 80s.
Yeah, I have the same thing, but swapping Florida and Tampa Bay, and then Detroit and Ottawa, I guess.
Yep. So that's it, guys. 46 minutes in. We got all the way through it.
Can't wait for Friday, baby.
Let's do it. We'll be back on Friday for a game preview episode, season preview episode, another season preview episode. They're all season preview episodes at this point. Season/game preview episode on Friday. Same time, same place. It's your team every day.